Hello and welcome. My name is Michelle, and I'd like to be sharing with you today on the subject of why do we bother to study leadership? Here's a great question that people always ask: are leaders born or made? Here's what I know as an answer. I know for certain that absolutely nobody came out of his mother's womb born with a tag, with an ID card that says, I am a leader. Even if you were born into royalty, or even if your parents were presidents and leaders of countries, there is absolutely nothing that says that somebody is born a leader. Here's what I know as a matter of fact, that leaders can be made. Now, no matter your background, your disposition, no matter your family, your social, economic status, anybody who desires it can learn to be a leader. But this doesn't answer the question. The question I really set for us today is, why do we bother to study leadership? Let's start off by talking about what leadership really is, okay? Here's what leaders do. My experience suggests that leaders do a number of things. Leaders, number one, get people to build connections. They get people to follow them. They get people to produce results. They get people to be better. And then they also get people to become leaders themselves. Now, here's what. If you have been listening and following this quick definition of leader, of what a leader does, gets people to build connections, gets people to develop themselves, gets people to produce results, gets people to follow them, gets people to become better leaders. There's one word that, or a couple of words that is common in all these definitions, and it simply gets people. A leader gets people to build connections. A leader gets people to become better. A leader gets people to produce results. Here's what I believe. I believe that that's what leadership is. Leadership is about getting people to do things. And that's what we call influence. That's what leaders do. Leaders influence people to get them to be better people, to produce better results, to develop themselves, and to build other leaders. Now, if we all agree that leadership is influence, then the next question is, how do we measure leadership? How do we know that leadership is effective or ineffective? Here's what I have come to learn. The true value, the true measure of leadership is what we call commitment. Commitment is not compliance in terms of doing what is required. Commitment is about doing what is required and going beyond the call of duty. So if you think about your organization, you've got people who are barely compliant, people who barely come into work at 8 o'clock, people who barely deliver on their tasks on a daily basis, people who barely deliver on their deliverables and on their targets. Those people are barely compliant. Compliance is, here's a gentleman or a lady who delivers on what he or she's asked to do, meets his or her targets. Now, commitment is doing compliance, coming to work at 8 o'clock, closing at the appropriate time, delivering on your tasks, but working creatively, being prepared to die for the organization, giving your blood, as they sometimes say. All of this is what committed employees do. Here's what I have come to learn, that the true value of leadership, the true measure of leadership is in commitment. And commitment, my dear friends, is sometimes, the way I like to put it is, what people do when you are not watching. You see, you get compliance as a chief executive, as a manager of a group of people. When you walk into your organization, people arrange themselves. People start to, guys on the way. When daddy comes home, all the children run around and they start dressing up the living room. Daddy is coming, daddy is coming. That's compliant behavior. That compliant behavior is only being exhibited because of your presence. Now, the true value of your leadership and the true measure of commitment is what happens when you turn your back away. What happens when daddy isn't there and then you see an elder sibling taking responsibility for saying to the other siblings that, you know what, even if daddy isn't here, we need to arrange the living room. The dining room has to be cleaned. The kitchen plates and the sink has to be cleared. When people start to act in the direction to which you are leading them, without your presence, then those people are truly committed. Your job as a leader is to get people to be committed. Okay, so it then brings us back to the question we started with at the beginning. The question was, why do we study leadership? Here's what I know. I know that leadership is influence. I know that the best measure of your influence is the commitment that you get from people. And I also know that commitment at the right level, and I call it the concept of 10 over 10. So here it is. Imagine if everybody in your organization, like you, was a 10 over 10 leader. So here's how organizations typically look. You've got a group of people who are, a couple of people who are 10 over 10, 9 over 10. Then you've got a large group of average performers who are somewhere between 4 over 10 and 6 over 10. And then you've also got a group of underperformers whose commitment is somewhere between 2, 3, 1 over 10. Now, organizations are typically dispersed in this way. The challenge with this is that you've got an average of somewhere around 5.5 over 10. Now, if you think about the results that you produce in your organization, whether you're in the private sector, in the public sector, or even in an international development organization, those results will be a lot higher if everybody was somewhere around 9 over 10 or 10 over 10. So your job as a leader is to get as many people as possible to where? To 10 over 10. Because you see, if everybody is batting somewhere around 9 over 10, 8.5 over 10, 10 over 10 in terms of commitment, then the results you will achieve will be astronomical. The reason why we study leadership, the reason why we say that leaders are not born, but leaders are made, is that we can therefore, as leaders, help to influence the people around us, get them to move their commitment levels from wherever it is, whether there are 3, there are 5, there are 7, or at 9, as high as and as close to 10 as possible. Because here's what, if you've got 10 over 10 commitment from everybody who works in your team, then you can naturally expect 10 over 10, 11, 15. You can expect higher results and higher productivity. That's why you must focus on building leaders. That is why we study leadership.